What if I told you that the reason you have not received the wealth you desire is not because you are not working hard enough, but because you are not sleeping deeply enough? And what if the secret to prosperity was hidden in the midnight hour, when your conscious mind finally surrenders and your subconscious mind opens like a flower to receive the abundance that has always been waiting for you? And what if Florence Scovel Shinn discovered this code over 100 years ago in New York City, when she realized that her wealthiest clients were not the ones who worked the longest hours, but the ones who learned to decree prosperity before sleep and then released it completely into the hands of the invisible while they dreamed? You can close your eyes right now if you wish, and everything I'm about to share with you will enter you whether you are awake or asleep, because your subconscious mind never sleeps, and it is always listening, and it is always reorganizing your reality according to the words that pass through your awareness. And the midnight hour is the most powerful time, because it is when the veil between the visible and invisible world is thinnest, and when your resistance is lowest, and when your soul is most receptive to the truth that you have always been wealthy. And you only forgot this truth when you were taught that money comes from struggle instead of surrender. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that prosperity is not something you chase, but something you allow. And she discovered that the people who tried hardest to manifest money were the ones who pushed it away, because trying implies lack, and lack creates more lack. But sleeping into wealth implies trust, and trust creates expansion. And when you decree prosperity at midnight and then fall asleep, you are telling the universe that you are so certain of your supply that you do not even need to stay awake to monitor it. And this level of surrender is what opens the floodgates. Let me tell you about Barbara and what happened to her when she learned this midnight prosperity code. And her story will show you exactly what becomes possible when you stop trying to make money happen and instead allow money to find you while you sleep. Her name was Barbara, and she was 53 years old, and she lived in a small apartment in Columbus, Ohio. And for the previous 18 months, she had been unable to sleep more than 3 or 4 hours per night because she had a debt of $12,347 that was suffocating her. And every night at 2:23 in the morning, she would wake up with her heart pounding and her chest tight, and she would lie there in the darkness, calculating and recalculating how she could possibly pay this money, and there was no solution that her rational mind could find. Barbara worked as an administrative assistant, and her salary was $31,000 per year, and after rent and food and basic expenses, there was almost nothing left, and she had already borrowed from her sister, and her sister had made it clear that there would be no more help, and Barbara felt the shame of this burning in her chest every time she thought about it. And she had stopped answering phone calls from numbers she did not recognize because they were always debt collectors, and their voices made her feel like she was drowning. And she would sit at her kitchen table at 6:15 in the morning with a cup of lukewarm coffee that she could not taste, and she would stare at the stack of bills with red letters that said final notice, and she felt like a failure, and she felt like she would never escape this trap. The apartment was small and dark and smelled like the lavender candle she burned to try to calm her nerves. But the scent only reminded her that she had spent $8.99 on something she did not need, and this made her feel even more guilty. And the walls were thin, and she could hear her neighbor's television through the wall, and sometimes she would hear couples arguing and babies crying, and it all felt like evidence that everyone was struggling just like she was, and there was no way out for any of them. And the window in her bedroom looked out onto a parking lot. And sometimes at 3 in the morning, she would stand at that window and watch the streetlights and wonder how her life had become so small and so suffocating. Barbara had tried everything she knew to try, and she had made vision boards, and she had written affirmations, and she had listened to prosperity meditations, and she had tithed to her church even when she could not afford it. And nothing had changed. And in fact, things had gotten worse, because now she felt like a spiritual failure on top of being a financial failure. And she would lie awake at night and think, maybe I am doing something wrong, and maybe I am being punished, and maybe I do not deserve wealth. And these thoughts circled in her mind like vultures, and they ate away at the last shreds of her hope. Then one night at 11:47, Barbara was scrolling on her phone because she could not sleep, and she came across a teaching about Florence Scovel Shinn and the Midnight Prosperity Decree. And the teaching said that you do not manifest wealth while you are awake, but while you are asleep, because sleep is when the subconscious mind reorganizes your reality according to your deepest decrees. And the teaching said that if you decree prosperity at the stroke of midnight and then fall asleep with complete trust, then within 48 hours you will see evidence of the shift. And Barbara read this, and something in her chest loosened just slightly, and she thought, what do I have to lose? That night, Barbara set her alarm for 11:58, and when it went off, she sat up in bed and she spoke out loud into the darkness of her room, and she said the words exactly as the teaching had instructed. And she said, I am a natural receiver of wealth, and money flows to me now while I sleep, and I release all effort, and I trust the invisible supply, and it is already done. And as she spoke these words, her voice shook, because part of her felt ridiculous, and part of her felt like she was lying, and part of her felt a tiny flicker of something that might have been hope. And then she lay back down, and she closed her eyes, and she did something she had not done in 18 months, which was, she fell asleep quickly and deeply, and she did not wake until 7:32 the next morning. When Barbara woke on that first morning, she felt different, and she could not explain how, but her body felt lighter, and her chest did not have that familiar tightness. And she got up and made coffee, and she did not look at the bills on the table, and instead, she got ready for work, and she noticed that the morning light coming through her window looked softer somehow, and the air felt different, and she thought, I am imagining this, but she also thought, maybe I am not, and she went to work, and nothing unusual happened that day, except that she did not feel the usual dread and panic, and instead she felt a strange calm that she did not understand and could not explain. That night at 11:58, Barbara set her alarm again, and she spoke the decree again, and this time her voice was steadier, and she fell asleep even faster, and she slept through the entire night without waking, and when she woke the next morning at 7:03 she felt even lighter, and she checked her phone, and there was an email from someone she had not heard from in 7 years, and the email said, I was thinking about you, and I remembered that I never paid you back for that loan you gave me when my mother was sick, and I want to make it right, and I am sending you a check. And Barbara stared at this email, and her hands started to shake because she had completely forgotten about that loan, and it had been $300, and she had written it off years ago as money she would never see again. But the email said the check was not for $300, but for $1,200, because the person wanted to pay interest for all the years of delay. And Barbara sat on the edge of her bed, and she started to cry, and she did not know if she was crying from relief or shock or disbelief. But the tears came, and they would not stop, and she thought, this is the first sign, and something in her knew that more was coming, and she felt a certainty that she had never felt before. And it was not based on logic or evidence, but on a deep knowing that seemed to come from a place beyond her conscious mind. On the second night, Barbara spoke the decree at midnight, and she fell asleep, and she had a dream that she was swimming in a clear river, and the water was warm, and there were gold coins at the bottom of the river, and they were catching the sunlight, and she was not trying to grab them, but they were floating up to her of their own accord. And she woke from this dream at 5:51 in the morning, and she felt a joy that seemed to have no reason, and she got up, and she made coffee, and she sat at her kitchen table, and for the first time in 18 months, she did not feel afraid of the day ahead. At work that morning, Barbara's supervisor called her into the office, and Barbara felt her stomach drop because she thought she was going to be reprimanded or maybe even fired. But instead, her supervisor said, we have been restructuring the department, and we realized we have been underpaying you for your level of responsibility. And we are giving you a raise of $6,000 per year, retroactive to 6 months ago, which means you will receive a check for $3,000 in your next paycheck. And Barbara stared at her supervisor, and she could not speak. And her supervisor said, are you okay? And Barbara nodded and said, yes, I am just surprised. And she went back to her desk, and she put her head in her hands, and she thought, this is real, and this is happening. And I did not make this happen by trying, and I did not make this happen by working harder, and I made this happen by sleeping and trusting. That afternoon, Barbara received a phone call from a number she did not recognize, and normally she would not have answered, but something told her to answer, and it was a woman from the local utility company. And the woman said, "We are auditing accounts, and we discovered that you have been overcharged for the past 3 years due to a billing error, and we are refunding you $2,133, and the check will arrive within 7 business days." And Barbara thanked the woman and hung up, and she sat very still, and she counted in her mind the money that was coming, and it was $1,200 plus $3,000 plus $2,133, which was $6,333, and this was more than half of her debt, and it had been less than 48 hours since she started the midnight decree. On the third night, Barbara spoke the decree at midnight, and this time she added her own words, and she said, "Thank you for what is already mine, and thank you for showing me that I was always supplied, and I just could not see it," and she fell asleep. And she slept more deeply than she had slept since she was a child. And when she woke in the morning at 8:17, she felt like a different person. And she looked in the mirror, and her face looked younger, and her eyes looked brighter. And she thought, "I am becoming who I always was, and I am remembering my true identity." Over the next 2 weeks, more money came in ways that Barbara could not have predicted or planned, and an old friend asked her to do some bookkeeping on the side for $500, and her tax return was larger than expected by $942, and her landlord reduced her rent by $80 per month because he said she was a good tenant. And all of this added up, and within 30 days of starting the Midnight Prosperity Decree, Barbara had paid off the entire debt of $12,347, and she had $718 left over. And she sat in her apartment on a Sunday afternoon, and she felt a peace that she had never known, and she understood that prosperity had nothing to do with her job or her salary or her circumstances, and everything to do with her alignment with the invisible supply that was always available, but that she had been blocking with her fear and her trying and her lack of trust. Barbara continued the Midnight Decree every night, and within 6 months her salary increased again, and she moved to a larger apartment with windows that looked out onto trees instead of a parking lot, and she started sleeping 8 hours every night without waking. And she would tell people who asked her what changed, and she would say, "I stopped trying to make money happen, and I started sleeping into wealth." And most people did not understand what she meant, but the ones who were ready to hear it would ask her to teach them, and she would share the Midnight Prosperity Code that Florence Scovel Shinn had taught, and that had transformed her life completely. Now, before we go any deeper, I want to invite you to do something, and this is not for me, but this is for you. And if this teaching resonates with you, and if you feel that you were guided to hear these words, then I invite you to touch the subscribe button now, because when you subscribe, you are telling the universe that you are ready to receive, and you are opening yourself as a channel for these teachings to continue flowing to you. And every time a new teaching is released, it will come to you at the exact moment your soul needs it. And this is not an accident, and this is not a coincidence, but this is divine timing. And you do not subscribe for me, but you subscribe for your own prosperity and your own awakening. And this is the first step of trust. And after you subscribe, I invite you to go to the comments and write only 3 words, which are, "I am receiving now." And when you write these words, you are making a public decree, and you are activating the law of witness. And there are thousands of souls who will read your words and who will witness your decree, and their witness strengthens your field, and your witness strengthens their field. And this is how the collective prosperity grid is activated, and this is how we all rise together. And these 3 words are not an affirmation, but a statement of fact, because you are already receiving right now in this moment, even if you cannot see it yet with your physical eyes. And when you write, "I am receiving now," you are acknowledging what is already true in the invisible realm. If you choose not to do this right now, that is perfectly fine, and your path is your own, and there is no judgment and no pressure. But I will tell you that this moment right now is the moment of greatest power, because you are in the energy of the teaching, and you are in the frequency of possibility. And if you wait until later, the moment will have passed, and the energy will have shifted. And so if you feel aligned, then do it now. And if you do not feel aligned, then simply continue listening and trust that you are exactly where you need to be. Now you can relax completely, and you do not need to do anything else, and you do not need to take notes, and you do not need to remember everything I say, because your subconscious mind is recording every word, and it will keep what you need, and it will release what you do not need. And if you fall asleep during this teaching, that is not only okay, but that is perfect, because sleep is when the deepest transformation happens, and sleep is when your conscious resistance dissolves, and your subconscious mind opens fully to receive the codes I am transmitting. And so close your eyes if you have not already, and let your body settle, and let your breathing slow, and know that everything I share from this point forward will enter you, whether you are awake or asleep. And the wealth you seek is already seeking you, and it will find you in your dreams. Florence Scovel Shinn was born in 1871 in Camden, New Jersey, and she lived during a time when women were not expected to be spiritual teachers, and she was trained as an artist and an illustrator, and she spent the early part of her life drawing pictures for magazines and books, and she was good at this work, but she always felt that there was something more that she was meant to do, and something more that she was meant to share with the world. And she did not know what this was until she was in her 40s, and she began to have experiences that showed her that words were not just sounds, but were creative forces that could reorganize reality. She moved to New York City, and she began to study metaphysics, and she studied the teachings of the Bible and of Eastern philosophy and of the transcendentalists. And she began to see patterns that no one else was seeing, and she began to understand that the universe operated according to invisible laws, and that these laws were not arbitrary but were completely dependable, and that anyone could learn to work with these laws and create the life they desired. And she began to teach small groups of people in her apartment, and word spread, and soon she was teaching larger and larger audiences. And eventually she wrote her books, and her most famous book was The Game of Life and How to Play It. And this book has transformed millions of lives over the past 100 years. One of the core teachings that Florence Scovel Shinn emphasized again and again was that your words are not descriptions of reality, but decrees that create reality. And she would say to her students, you are decreeing all day long with every word you speak, and most people are decreeing poverty and lack and limitation without even knowing it. And they say things like, I can never afford that, and money does not grow on trees, and I am always broke. And these words are decrees, and the universe hears them and says, yes, I will create that for you. And then you wonder why you never have enough. And she taught that if you want to change your financial reality, you must first change the words you speak, and especially the words you speak right before you fall asleep, because the subconscious mind is most receptive in that liminal state between waking and sleeping. Florence discovered the power of the midnight decree through her own experience, and there is a story that she told about herself when she was struggling financially in the early years of her teaching, and she had very few students and very little income, and she did not know how she was going to pay her rent. And one night she was lying in bed unable to sleep because of worry, and she looked at the clock, and it was exactly midnight, and something told her to sit up and speak a decree out loud, and the words that came through her were, I am supplied by the inexhaustible substance of the universe, and my needs are met now, and it is already done. And after she spoke these words, she felt a shift in her body, and she fell asleep immediately. And the next morning, she received a letter in the mail from a woman she had never met, and the woman said, I was guided to send you this money. And the envelope contained $100, which was exactly the amount Florence needed for her rent, and $40 more. After this experience, Florence began to teach her students about the midnight decree, and she would tell them that midnight is not arbitrary, but is a sacred hour, because it is the transition point between one day and the next, and it is the moment when the old day dies and the new day is born, and it is the moment of greatest potential and greatest power. And she would say, when you decree at midnight, you are planting a seed in the fertile soil of the new day, and then when you fall asleep, you are allowing that seed to germinate in the darkness of your subconscious mind, and you do not need to dig it up to see if it is growing, and you do not need to worry about it, and you do not need to do anything but trust that the invisible forces are working on your behalf while you rest. Let me tell you a story that Florence Scovel Shinn told about one of her students, and this story illustrates the principle perfectly. And the student's name was Robert, and he was 61 years old, and he had been a successful businessman for most of his life. But in his late 50s, his business had failed, and he had lost everything, and he was living in a small room in a boarding house, and he was working odd jobs to pay for food, and he felt like his life was over, and he felt like he had nothing left to give. And he came to one of Florence's lectures because a friend had dragged him there, and he sat in the back row with his arms crossed and his face set in a skeptical expression. Florence was teaching that night about the midnight prosperity decree, and Robert listened, and he thought, this is nonsense, and this woman is delusional, and there is no way that speaking words at midnight can change anything. But something in him also felt a tiny spark of hope, and he thought, what do I have to lose? And after the lecture, he approached Florence and he said, I do not believe what you are teaching, but I am desperate enough to try it. And Florence looked at him with such compassion, and she said, that is all I ask. And she wrote down the decree for him on a small piece of paper, and the decree said, I am the perfect expression of infinite prosperity, and all that is mine by divine right now comes to me. And she told him to speak these words at midnight every night for 30 nights, and then come back and tell her what had happened. Robert took the paper and he went back to his boarding house, and that night he set his alarm for 11:55, and when it went off, he sat up in his narrow bed in his small room, and he felt foolish, and he looked around to make sure no one could hear him, and then he spoke the words that Florence had written, and his voice was flat and unconvincing, and he did not believe a single word he was saying. And then he lay back down and he thought, well, I did it, and nothing will happen. And he fell asleep, and he dreamed that he was walking through a vast, empty warehouse, and he could hear his footsteps echoing, and he felt very alone. The next morning, Robert woke at 6:15, and nothing had changed, and his room was still small and depressing, and he still had only $3.27 in his pocket, and he thought, I knew it was nonsense. But that night he set his alarm again, and he spoke the decree again, and this time his voice was a little stronger, and he fell asleep a little faster, and he dreamed that the warehouse was not quite as empty, and there were a few boxes stacked in the corner. Robert continued the midnight decree every night, and for the first week nothing changed in his external circumstances, but something was changing internally, and he noticed that he was not waking up with the same sense of dread, and he noticed that he was not thinking about his failure as constantly, and he noticed that he was starting to have ideas about what he might do next. And these ideas felt different from the desperate schemes he had been concocting before. And these new ideas felt calm and clear and possible. On the 8th night, Robert spoke the decree at midnight, and he fell asleep, and he had a dream that the warehouse was now full of boxes and crates, and they were all labeled with his name, and he was walking among them and opening them, and inside each one was something valuable. And he woke from this dream at 3:42 in the morning, and he felt a certainty that he could not explain. And he thought, something is happening, and I cannot see it yet, but I can feel it. On the 9th day, Robert was walking down the street, and he ran into a man he had not seen in 12 years, and this man had been a business associate before Robert's company failed, and they stopped and talked, and the man said, I am starting a new venture, and I need someone with your experience, and I know what happened to your business. But I also know that you are brilliant, and I want to offer you a consulting position, and the pay is $2,000 per month. And Robert stood on the sidewalk, and he felt like he might cry, and he said yes, and the man said, can you start on Monday? And Robert said yes. That night, Robert spoke the midnight decree, and his voice was full of emotion, and he added his own words, and he said, thank you for seeing me when I could not see myself, and thank you for this opportunity, and it is already done. And he fell asleep, and he slept more deeply than he had slept in 3 years. And when he woke in the morning at 7:58, he felt like the warehouse in his dreams had finally opened in his waking life. Robert started the consulting job, and he was good at it. And within 3 months, the client offered him a full-time position with a salary of $47,000 per year. And Robert accepted, and within 6 months, he had moved out of the boarding house and into a small apartment, and within a year, he had saved enough money to start investing again. and within 2 years, he had more wealth than he had before his business failed, and he continued to speak the midnight decree every single night for the rest of his life. And he would tell people that the decree was not what brought him the money, but the decree changed his identity. And when his identity changed, his reality reorganized itself to match. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that this is how it always works. And she would say, "You do not attract what you want, but you attract what you are. And if you are in a state of lack, you will attract more lack. And if you are in a state of prosperity, you will attract more prosperity." And the midnight decree is not about convincing the universe to give you something, but about reminding yourself of what you already are and what you have always been. And when you speak the words, "I am supplied," or "I am prosperous," you are not lying and you are not pretending, but you are speaking the truth of your divine identity. And your subconscious mind hears this truth and begins to reorganize your thoughts and your beliefs and your actions, and then your external reality reorganizes to match. She also taught that the reason the midnight decree is so powerful is that when you speak it right before sleep, you are bypassing the conscious mind, which is full of doubt and resistance, and you are speaking directly to the subconscious mind, which is completely receptive, and which does not question or argue, but simply accepts what it hears as truth. And then while you sleep, your subconscious mind goes to work, reorganizing your reality according to the decree, and you do not need to do anything else, and you do not need to figure out how it will happen, and you do not need to make a plan. And in fact, any trying or efforting on your part will actually slow down the process, because trying comes from lack, and lack repels prosperity. Florence would say to her students, "The invisible substance of the universe is infinite, and it is always ready to take form according to your word. And your word is your decree, and your decree is most powerful when you are in a state of surrender. And sleep is the ultimate state of surrender. And so, when you decree prosperity at midnight and then fall asleep, you are saying to the universe, 'I trust you completely, and I know that you are working on my behalf, and I do not need to control or manage or force anything.' And this level of trust is what opens the door and allows the abundance that has always been yours to flow into your experience. Many of Florence's students would ask her how long it takes for the decree to manifest, and she would always say it depends, and she would explain that the manifestation time depends on how much resistance you have and how much you trust and how aligned you are with your true identity. And she would say for some people, the shift happens within 48 hours, and for others it takes longer, but the shift always happens if you persist and if you do not give up. And she would say, the universe is never late and it is never early, and it always delivers at the perfect moment, which is the moment when you are ready to receive. And while you are listening to these words now, your subconscious mind is absorbing the teaching, and it is beginning to reorganize your reality. And you do not need to believe everything I am saying, and you do not need to understand how it works, and you only need to allow the words to enter you and allow the possibility to open in you. And if you are falling asleep now, that is perfect, because sleep is when the deepest work happens, and sleep is when your conscious resistance dissolves completely, and your subconscious mind opens like a flower to receive the abundance that is your birthright. And what comes next is about the nature of words, and about how sound creates form, and about how your voice is a creative instrument that you have been using unconsciously, but that you can now begin to use consciously and with intention. The ancient scriptures say in the beginning was the Word, and this is not poetic language, but this is literal truth, because sound is vibration, and vibration is the organizing principle of all matter. And everything that exists in physical form began as a vibration in the invisible realm. And your voice is a creative instrument that produces vibrations that reorganize the field around you. And when you speak, you are not just making noise, but you are sending out a frequency that interacts with the quantum field and shapes what manifests in your life. And most people do not realize this, and they speak carelessly, and they speak words of lack and limitation, and then they wonder why lack and limitation is what they experience. Florence Scovel Shinn understood this, and she taught that every word you speak is a decree. And a decree is not a wish or a hope, but a command. And when you say, "I am prosperous," You are not asking the universe to make you prosperous, but you are declaring that prosperity is your nature, and the universe has no choice but to rearrange itself to match your declaration. And this is not magic, and this is not wishful thinking, but this is how reality works at the quantum level. And modern physics is finally catching up to what the ancient mystics always knew, which is that consciousness creates matter, and words are containers of consciousness, and when you speak a word, you are releasing consciousness into the field, and that consciousness takes form. The reason that the Midnight Prosperity Decree is so effective is that you are speaking at a time when your brainwaves are naturally slowing down and moving from beta to alpha to theta. And these slower brainwave states are when your subconscious mind is most receptive and when the words you speak bypass your critical thinking mind and go directly into your subconscious, where they are accepted as truth without question. And then while you sleep, your brain moves into delta, which is the deepest state of consciousness, and this is when your subconscious mind has full access to the quantum field and can reorganize your reality at the most fundamental level. Let me tell you about Richard and what happened to him when he learned to use his voice as a prosperity code, and his story will show you the power of vibrational frequency and how changing what you speak changes what you receive. Richard was 61 years old, and he lived in Portland, Oregon, and he had worked for the same company for 37 years, and then the company restructured, and his position was eliminated, and he was given a severance package of $18,000, and he was told to clear out his desk by Friday. And Richard felt like the ground had disappeared beneath his feet, and he did not know what to do, because he was too old to start over and too young to retire, and he had a mortgage and a car payment, and his wife had medical expenses, and he felt like he was falling, and there was nothing to catch him. Richard had always been a pessimistic person, and his default way of speaking was negative, and he would say things like, "Nothing ever works out for me, and I always get the short end of the stick, and I knew this would happen." And he did not realize that every time he spoke these words, he was decreeing that outcome, and the universe was listening and was saying, "Yes, I will create that for you, because your word is law." And Richard's life reflected his words perfectly, because he had always struggled financially, and he had always felt like he was barely keeping his head above water, and now at 61 years old, he was unemployed and terrified. Richard's wife, Margaret, was a spiritual woman, and she had been studying the teachings of Florence Scovel Shinn, and she had tried to share them with Richard, but he had always dismissed them as New Age nonsense, and he would say, "You cannot just think your way to prosperity, and you have to work hard, and life is hard, and that is just reality." But now that Richard had lost his job, Margaret said to him, "Your way is not working, and maybe it is time to try something different," and Richard was desperate, enough that he agreed to listen. Margaret gave Richard a small book that contained Florence Scovel Shinn's teachings about the power of the spoken word, and Richard read it in one sitting, and something in the book struck him, and it was the idea that he had been creating his reality with his words all along, and that if he wanted to change his reality, he had to change his words, and the book explained the Midnight Decree and how to use it. And Richard thought, "This seems too simple to work, but I have nothing to lose," and Margaret said, "Try it for 30 nights and see what happens." That first night, Richard set his alarm for 11:57, and when it went off, he and Margaret both sat up in bed, and Margaret had written out a decree for him, and it said, "I am wealth itself, and money flows to me easily and naturally, and all my needs are met, and I trust the infinite supply." And Richard read these words out loud, and his voice cracked because part of him felt like he was lying, and part of him felt embarrassed. And Margaret squeezed his hand and said, "Keep going." And Richard read the words again, and this time his voice was stronger. And then they both lay back down, and Richard expected to lie awake, worrying as he had been doing for weeks, but instead he fell asleep within minutes, and he slept through the night without waking. The next morning, Richard woke at 6:33, and the first thing he noticed was that his chest did not feel tight. And the second thing he noticed was that he was not immediately flooded with panic and fear, and he got up and made coffee, and he sat at the kitchen table, and he thought, "I do not know what is happening, but something feels different." And Margaret came into the kitchen, and she said, "How do you feel?" And Richard said, "I feel calm, and that is strange." And Margaret smiled and said, "The Decree is working. That day, Richard applied for several jobs online, and he did this without the usual sense of desperation and dread, and he noticed that the words he used in his cover letters were different, and instead of writing, "I am hoping you will consider me," he wrote, "I am confident that my experience will be valuable to your company." And he did not consciously choose these words, but they came out of him naturally, and he thought, "This is odd," but he kept writing. That night, Richard and Margaret spoke the midnight decree together again, and this time Richard added his own words, and he said, "I release all fear, and I trust that I am supported." And he fell asleep quickly, and he had a dream that he was standing in front of a door, and the door was made of gold, and it was locked, and he was trying different keys, and none of them worked, and then he stopped trying, and he just stood there, and the door opened by itself, and he woke from this dream at 4:48 in the morning, and he felt a knowing that he could not explain, but he knew that something was shifting. On the third day, Richard received a phone call from a former colleague, and the colleague said, "I heard about what happened, and I am so sorry. And I want you to know that I recommended you to a friend of mine who is starting a consulting firm, and he is looking for someone with your exact expertise, and he wants to talk to you." And Richard felt his heart start to beat faster, and he said, "Thank you." And he hung up, and he told Margaret, and she said, "See, it is already working." And Richard said, "It is too soon to know," but he felt a flicker of hope. Richard called the number his colleague had given him, and he spoke to the man who was starting the consulting firm. And the man said, "I need someone who can hit the ground running, and I have heard great things about you, and I would like to offer you a contract for 6 months at $5,000 per month, and after that we can talk about making it permanent." And Richard said yes immediately, and when he hung up the phone, he sat very still, and he thought, this is the first sign, and he realized that he had not said his usual negative phrases, and he had not said, "I knew it would not work out," or "This is too good to be true," but instead, he had said yes, and he had received. That night, Richard spoke the midnight decree with real conviction, and his voice was full and strong, and he said, "I am wealth itself, and money flows to me easily. And I am a magnet for prosperity, and all the doors that need to open are opening now." And he fell asleep, and he slept deeply, and he dreamed that he was swimming in a river made of gold coins, and the coins were flowing over him and through him, and he was not trying to grab them, but they were sticking to his skin. And when he woke in the morning at 7:19, he felt wealthy for the first time in his life, and this feeling had nothing to do with the consulting contract, but had to do with something deeper, which was a shift in his identity. Richard started the consulting work, and he was good at it, and he realized that he was actually better at this work than he had been at his old job, because this work allowed him to use his skills in a more creative way. And after 3 months, the man who had hired him said, "I want to make this permanent, and I want to offer you a salary of $67,000 per year," which was more than Richard had been making at his old job. And Richard accepted, and he continued to speak the midnight decree every night, and he noticed that the more he spoke words of prosperity, the more prosperity showed up in his life. And not just financial prosperity, but prosperity in every area. Within 6 months, Richard had paid off his car, and within a year, he had paid off his mortgage, and within 2 years, he and Margaret had saved enough money to take a trip to Italy, which was something they had always wanted to do, but had always thought they could not afford. And Richard would tell people who asked him what had changed, and he would say, "I changed what I was decreeing, and when I changed my words, I changed my frequency. And when I changed my frequency, I changed my life." And most people did not understand what he meant, but the ones who were ready to hear it would ask him to explain more, and he would tell them about Florence Scovel Shinn, and about the Midnight Prosperity Decree, and about how words are not just sounds, but are creative vibrations that shape reality. The principle that Richard learned, and that Florence Scovel Shinn taught, is that your voice is a tuning fork, and whatever frequency you emit is the frequency you will attract back to you. And if you are constantly speaking words of lack, then you are emitting a frequency of lack, and you will attract more lack. And if you speak words of abundance, then you are emitting a frequency of abundance, and you will attract more abundance. And this is not positive thinking, and this is not pretending, and this is quantum physics, and this is spiritual law. And the midnight decree works because you are speaking at a time when your frequency is naturally more coherent and when your words go directly into your subconscious without interference from your conscious doubt. Florence taught that most people sabotage their prosperity with their casual speech, and they say things like, "I cannot afford that," and "money is tight," and "I am broke," and these are all decrees, and the universe listens to your decrees and creates accordingly. And she would tell her students to become vigilant about every word they spoke, and to catch themselves when they were about to speak a word of lack, and to replace it with a word of abundance. And she would say, "At first, this will feel artificial, and it will feel like you are lying, but you are not lying, because abundance is your true nature and lack is the lie. And when you speak words of abundance, you are speaking the truth, even if your current circumstances do not yet reflect that truth." And the reason to speak the prosperity decree at midnight specifically is that midnight is the hour when the veil between the conscious and subconscious mind is thinnest, and when your words have the most direct access to your subconscious programming. And your subconscious mind is what creates your reality, because it controls 95% of your thoughts and behaviors. And if your subconscious is programmed with lack, then you will create lack, no matter how hard you try consciously to create abundance. And the only way to reprogram your subconscious is to speak new words into it when it is most receptive, which is right before you fall asleep, and then to allow those words to work on you while you sleep and while your conscious mind is offline. While you rest, now your subconscious is already beginning to accept the new frequency, and you do not need to do anything but allow it. And what comes next is about identity, and about how you cannot become prosperous until you see yourself as prosperous, and how the midnight decree helps you shift from an identity of lack to an identity of wealth. And this shift is not something you do, but something you allow, and sleep is the great allower. And so continue resting and continue receiving, and know that everything you need is already being rearranged in the invisible realm. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that the greatest secret of manifestation is this simple truth, which is that you do not attract what you want, but you attract what you are. And this means that if you want to be wealthy, you cannot approach wealth as something outside of you that you need to chase or earn or deserve, but you must recognize that wealth is your identity and wealth is who you are at your core. And when you understand this, then you stop trying to get wealth and you start allowing wealth to flow through you, because you are not trying to become something you are not, but you are remembering what you have always been. Most people approach prosperity from a state of lack, and they say, "I want to be wealthy." And the very statement "I want" implies that you do not have, and that you are separate from what you desire. And this creates a vibrational gap between you and prosperity. And as long as that gap exists, you will keep wanting, and you will not receive, because the universe does not respond to your wanting, but responds to your being. And if your being is, "I am someone who lacks money," then that is what you will continue to experience, and no amount of affirmations or visualizations will change this until you change your identity at the deepest level. The midnight prosperity decree works because it is not an affirmation, but a declaration of identity. And when you say "I am wealth itself," or "I am supplied by infinite substance," you are not trying to convince yourself of something that is not true, but you are remembering and speaking aloud what has always been true, which is that you are an individualized expression of the infinite source, and the infinite source is by definition infinitely abundant, and therefore you are abundant, and this is not something you need to achieve or earn, but something you need to remember and embody. Let me tell you about Linda and how she discovered that identity precedes manifestation, and how changing her identity changed everything in her financial reality, even though nothing in her external circumstances had changed first. Linda was 57 years old, and she lived in Tucson, Arizona, and she had been unemployed for 18 months, and she had been applying for jobs constantly and going to interviews and doing everything right according to the conventional wisdom, but she kept getting rejected, and she was down to her last $942, and she did not know how she was going to pay her rent, which was $1,100, and she felt like she was drowning, and she felt like the universe had abandoned her. Linda had grown up in a family where money was always tight, and her father had worked 3 jobs, and her mother had clipped coupons, and they had always said things like, "Money does not grow on trees, and we cannot afford that, and you have to work hard for every penny." And Linda had absorbed these beliefs deep into her subconscious. And even though she consciously wanted prosperity, her subconscious identity was, "I am someone who struggles and who never has enough." And this identity was creating her reality, and she did not even realize it. One afternoon, Linda was at the library because she could not afford to pay for internet at home, and she was using the library computer to search for jobs, and she was feeling hopeless and defeated. And she happened to notice a book on the shelf next to the computer, and the book was called Your Word is Your Wand by Florence Scovel Shinn. And something about the title caught her attention, and she picked up the book and she started reading it right there, standing in the aisle, and she could not put it down, and she checked the book out and took it home and read it in one sitting that evening. The book explained that prosperity is not something you get, but something you are, and that if you want to experience wealth, you must first claim the identity of wealth, and the book gave specific instructions for the Midnight Prosperity Decree. And Linda thought, "This is crazy, but I have tried everything else, and nothing has worked, so what do I have to lose?" And she decided to try it for 40 nights in a row and see what happened. That first night, Linda set her alarm for 11:55, and when it rang, she sat up in bed in her small apartment, and she felt ridiculous. And she looked at the words Florence Scovel Shinn had written, which were, "I am a daughter of the infinite, and all that the infinite has is mine, and I am supplied now and always." And Linda spoke these words out loud, and her voice was shaky and uncertain because every part of her felt like she was lying, and every part of her felt like this was not true. Because if she was supplied, then why did she only have $942 left, and why had she been unemployed for 18 months? But she spoke the words anyway because the book had said that you do not need to believe the words. You only need to speak them and let them work on your subconscious while you sleep. Linda lay back down, and she expected to lie awake worrying as she had been doing every night for months. But instead, she fell asleep within 10 minutes, and she slept through the entire night, which was unusual for her. And when she woke in the morning at 7:41, she noticed that she felt different, and she could not explain how, but it was as if some weight had lifted from her chest, and she got up and made coffee, and she sat by the window and watched the sun rise, and she thought, maybe something is changing. That day, Linda did not apply for any jobs, and this was strange, because normally she would spend hours every day searching and applying and following up. But on this day, she felt an inner prompting to just rest and to trust. And she spent the day reading more of Florence Scovel Shinn's books and writing in her journal and going for a walk. And she noticed that she was not feeling the usual panic about money, and instead, she felt a strange calm that seemed to have no logical basis. That night, Linda spoke the Midnight Decree again, and this time she added her own words, and she said, "I am not someone who lacks, but I am someone who is supplied, and I release the identity of struggle, and I claim the identity of ease." And she fell asleep quickly, and she had a dream that she was wearing a crown made of light, and people were bowing to her and calling her queen. And she woke from this dream at 3:27 in the morning, and she thought, that is a strange dream. But she also thought maybe it means something. On the third morning, Linda woke, and she felt compelled to check her email. And there was a message from a woman she had worked with 7 years ago. And the woman said, "I am starting a new business, and I need someone with your skills, and I thought of you immediately, and I would love to talk to you about a position." And Linda read this email 3 times because she could not believe it was real, and she responded right away and said, "Yes, I would love to talk," and they scheduled a call for that afternoon. On the call, the woman said, "I am offering a starting salary of $38,000 per year with the possibility of increase after 6 months. And I know this is a new business and there is some risk, but I have a good feeling about it, and I have a good feeling about you." And Linda said yes without hesitation. And when she hung up the phone, she sat very still, and she thought this happened so fast. And she realized that the job offer had come in less than 72 hours after she started. The Midnight Decree. And she thought maybe Florence Scovel Shinn was right, and maybe identity really does precede manifestation. Linda continued speaking the midnight decree every night, and she started the new job, and she was good at it, and she realized that this job was a much better fit for her skills than any of the jobs she had been applying for during her 18 months of unemployment. And she thought maybe all those rejections were protection, and maybe the universe was waiting for the right opportunity to come along. And within 3 months, the woman who had hired her said business is going better than expected, and I want to give you a raise, and your new salary is $46,000 per year. And Linda accepted, and she felt tears in her eyes because this was more money than she had ever made in her life. But the more important change was not the money, but was the shift in Linda's identity, because she stopped seeing herself as someone who struggles and started seeing herself as someone who is supplied, and this shift was internal and had nothing to do with the job or the salary, but had to do with how she saw herself and how she spoke to herself. And when she would notice an old thought, like I cannot afford, that she would catch it and replace it with I am supplied and I have everything I need. And over time, these new thoughts became her new identity, and her new identity created a new reality. Within 6 months, Linda had saved enough money to move to a better apartment, and within a year, she had paid off all her debt. And within 2 years, the business she was working for had grown so much that she was offered a partnership, and her income jumped to $73,000 per year. And she continued to speak the midnight prosperity decree every single night. And she would tell people that the decree did not bring her the money, but the decree changed who she believed herself to be. And when she changed her identity, the money came naturally because she was no longer blocking it with beliefs of lack. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that there are layers of identity, and that most people identify with their circumstances, and they say, I am poor, or I am struggling, or I am unemployed. And these statements are identity statements, and they become self-fulfilling prophecies. And she taught that you must learn to identify with your divine nature instead of your circumstances. And your divine nature is abundant and prosperous and supplied. And when you identify with this truth, then your circumstances begin to shift to match your identity and not the other way around. She taught that there are specific identity statements that are most powerful for prosperity. And these are, I am supplied, and I am a magnet for wealth, and I am the perfect channel for infinite abundance, and money flows to me easily, and I am prospered in everything I do. And when you speak these statements at midnight, right before sleep, you are programming your subconscious mind with your true identity. And your subconscious mind then goes to work while you sleep, reorganizing your thoughts and beliefs and behaviors to match this identity, and then your external reality follows. The reason that the midnight decree must be spoken at midnight specifically is that this is the hour when you are moving from one identity to another, because you are moving from one day to another. And midnight is the death of the old and the birth of the new. And when you speak your prosperity decree, at this liminal moment, you are declaring that the old identity of lack is dying, and the new identity of abundance is being born. And then you fall asleep, which is a kind of death, and you wake in the morning, which is a kind of rebirth, and each night you are dying to who you were and being reborn as who you truly are. And while you listen to these words, your identity is already shifting, whether you realize it or not, because your subconscious mind is absorbing the truth that you are not someone who lacks, but someone who is supplied. And you do not need to try to believe this, and you do not need to convince yourself, but you only need to allow the words to plant themselves in your subconscious and allow them to grow while you rest. And what comes next is about resistance and about why you might be blocking prosperity without realizing it, and about how sleep dissolves resistance naturally and effortlessly. So continue resting and continue receiving. There is a paradox at the heart of manifestation. And the paradox is this, which is that the more you try to manifest prosperity, the more you push it away, and the more you surrender and stop trying, the faster it comes. And this seems backwards to the logical mind, because the logical mind says, if you want something, you must work hard and make it happen, and you must figure it out and control it and manage it. But spiritual law operates differently than logical law. and spiritual law says that trying implies lack, and lack repels prosperity, and surrendering implies trust, and trust attracts prosperity. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that most people who struggle with money are not struggling because they are lazy or incompetent, but because they are resisting the flow of prosperity through unconscious beliefs and fears. And these beliefs and fears create an invisible barrier between them and their supply. And no amount of hard work or positive thinking will break through this barrier until the resistance is released. And the only way to release resistance is through surrender and the midnight. Prosperity decree is a tool of surrender, because when you speak the decree and then fall asleep, you are saying, I am releasing control and I am trusting the invisible forces to work on my behalf. Resistance to prosperity takes many forms, and most people are not aware of their resistance because it operates at the subconscious level and was programmed in childhood. And the most common resistances are the belief that money is evil, or that wealthy people are greedy, or that you do not deserve wealth, or that wealth will change you in negative ways, or that if you have wealth, someone else must have lack, or that wealth brings problems, or that you must work hard and struggle to earn money, or that there is not enough for everyone, and these beliefs are all forms of resistance, and they block the flow of prosperity. Let me tell you about Robert and his journey through resistance and surrender, and how he learned that releasing resistance does not mean giving up, but means trusting, and how this trust opened the floodgates of prosperity in his life. Robert was 64 years old, and he lived in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and he had been a teacher for his entire career, and he loved teaching. But the salary had never been high, and he had always lived paycheck to paycheck. And he had always told himself that this was okay, because he was doing meaningful work, and money was not important. And he prided himself on being non-materialistic, and he looked down on people who cared about wealth. But beneath this conscious story, there was an unconscious resentment, because Robert had never been able to travel the way he wanted, or buy the books he wanted, or help his grandchildren the way he wanted. And he had a ceiling on his income, which was exactly $37,400 per year. And every time he got close to making more through summer teaching or side work, something would happen, and he would sabotage himself, and he would get sick, or he would quit the extra work, or he would spend the extra money on something unnecessary, and he would end up right back at $37,400. Robert did not realize he was doing this, and he thought he was just unlucky, or that the universe was testing him. But the truth was that he had an unconscious belief that it was wrong to make more than a certain amount, and this belief had come from his father, who had been a minister, and who had preached that poverty was noble and wealth was sinful. And Robert had absorbed this belief as a child, and it had become part of his identity, and every time he got close to breaking through his money, sealing his subconscious mind would sabotage him to keep him safe within his comfort zone. Robert's wife Diane had been studying the teachings of Florence Scovel Shinn, and she recognized what was happening, and she said to Robert, "You have a money ceiling, and you are not allowing yourself to receive more than $37,000. And Robert was offended, and he said, "That is not true. And I just have not had the opportunities." And Diane said, "You have had many opportunities, and you have said no to all of them." And Robert realized that she was right, and he thought, maybe I am resisting without knowing it. Diane gave Robert a small pamphlet that Florence Scovel Shinn had written about money blocks and resistance, and Robert read it, and he saw himself on every page, and the pamphlet explained that resistance to money usually comes from one of 7 core beliefs, and Robert recognized all 7 of them in himself. And the 7 beliefs were: first, that money is the root of evil; second, that wealthy people are greedy and selfish; third, that if I have money, someone else must go without; fourth, that money will corrupt me; fifth, that I do not deserve wealth; sixth, that wealth brings problems; and seventh, that I must struggle and suffer to earn money. And Robert thought, I believe all of these things, and no wonder I cannot get past $37,000. The pamphlet explained that the way to release resistance is not through fighting it or analyzing it, but through surrendering it, and it gave instructions for the Midnight Surrender Decree, which was slightly different from the Midnight Prosperity Decree because it focused on releasing rather than claiming. And the decree was, I release all resistance to wealth, and I surrender all fear, and I trust that prosperity is my divine right, and I allow money to flow to me easily." And Robert decided to try this for 40 nights and see what happened. On the first night, Robert set his alarm for midnight, and when it went off, he and Diane both sat up in bed, and Robert spoke the words, "I release all resistance to wealth," and as he said the word resistance, he felt something tighten in his chest, and he realized that he was afraid. And he was afraid that if he had money, he would become someone he did not want to be. And he was afraid that people would judge him, and he was afraid that he would lose himself, and these fears had been unconscious. But now they were coming to the surface, and he felt tears in his eyes, and Diane took his hand and said, "Keep going," and Robert said, "I surrender all fear, and I trust that prosperity is my divine right, and I allow money to flow to me easily." And then he lay back down, and he fell asleep, and he slept fitfully, and he had dreams of his father preaching about the sins of wealth. On the second night, Robert spoke the decree again, and this time when he said, "I release all resistance," he felt the tightness in his chest again, but he also felt it loosening slightly, and he fell asleep faster, and his dreams were less disturbing. And on the third night he spoke the decree, and he felt a wave of grief wash over him, and he realized that he was grieving all the years he had blocked prosperity, and all the experiences he had denied himself, and all the ways he had made life harder than it needed to be. And he cried, and Diane held him, and she said, "It is okay to grieve, and it is okay to let it go." And Robert said, "I surrender," and he meant it. On the fourth night, Robert spoke the decree, and for the first time he did not feel resistance, and instead he felt a lightness and a sense of possibility, and he fell asleep quickly, and he had a dream that he was standing at the edge of the ocean, and there were waves coming toward him, and he had been bracing against the waves, but in the dream he stopped bracing, and he let the waves lift him and carry him, and it felt effortless and joyful. And he woke from this dream at 6:41 in the morning, and he thought surrendering does not mean giving up, but means allowing. On the fifth day, Robert received a phone call from the superintendent of schools, and the superintendent said, "We have a special program that we are launching, and we need someone with your experience to lead the curriculum development. And it is a temporary position for 6 months, and it pays an additional $12,000 on top of your regular salary." And Robert felt his immediate impulse was to say no, and to think of reasons why he could not do it. But he caught himself, and he remembered the midnight surrender decree, and he said, "Yes, I will do it." And the superintendent said, "Wonderful, we are so grateful." On the sixth night, Robert spoke the decree, and he added his own words, and he said, "I am willing to be wrong about money, and I am willing to release my father's beliefs, and I am willing to discover that wealth is not evil, but is neutral and can be used for good." And he fell asleep, and he slept deeply and peacefully. And when he woke in the morning at 7:58, he felt like a different person, and he thought, "I am not who I was, and I am becoming who I was always meant to be." Over the next several weeks, Robert noticed that his relationship with money was changing, and he no longer felt guilty when he spent money on something he enjoyed, and he no longer felt resentment toward people who had wealth. And he started to see that money was simply energy, and it flowed where it was welcomed, and it avoided where it was resisted, and he started to welcome it. And the more he welcomed it, the more it came. The 6-month curriculum development position turned into a permanent position because the program was so successful, and Robert's salary increased to $53,000 per year, and then to $62,000, and then to $71,000. And he kept breaking through his old ceiling of $37,000, and each time he broke through, he felt freer and lighter and more like himself, and he realized that his resistance to money had not been protecting him, but had been limiting him and keeping him small. Within 2 years, Robert retired from teaching, and he and Diane moved to a small house on the coast, and Robert started a consulting business helping other schools develop curriculum. And his income in the first year was $96,000, which was more than twice what he had ever made as a teacher. And he continued to speak the midnight surrender decree every night, because he knew that resistance could creep back in if he was not vigilant, and he wanted to stay in a state of surrender and openness and trust. Robert would tell people that the biggest lesson he learned was that resistance is not something you fight, but something you release, and you release it by becoming aware of it and by surrendering it to something greater than yourself, and by trusting that you are safe to receive, and that prosperity does not make you evil, but makes you more of who you truly are. And when you trust this, then the resistance dissolves naturally, without effort and without struggle. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that the 7 money blocks that Robert experienced are universal, and that everyone has some version of these blocks, and that most people are completely unconscious of them. And this is why they struggle financially, despite working hard and doing all the right things. And she taught that the Midnight Surrender Decree is the most powerful tool for releasing these blocks, because you speak it at a time when your conscious resistance is lowest, and then you fall asleep, which is the ultimate act of surrender. And while you sleep, your subconscious mind releases the old beliefs and makes space for new beliefs to take root. She also taught that you cannot release resistance through force or through trying, and that the more you try to overcome your resistance, the stronger it becomes, because resistance feeds on attention. And the way to dissolve resistance is to stop fighting it and to simply witness it and name it and surrender it. And this is what the Midnight Decree does, and it allows you to release without efforting and to transform without controlling. And this is the paradox of surrender, which is that when you stop trying so hard, everything becomes easy. And as you rest now, your resistance is already dissolving whether you feel it or not, because your subconscious mind is hearing the truth that you are safe to receive, and that prosperity is your birthright, and that you do not need to protect yourself from wealth, but can open to it fully. And what comes next is about the signs that will show you that the shift is happening, and about how to read the language of the invisible realm. So continue resting and continue allowing, and know that everything is unfolding perfectly. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that the universe is always speaking to you and sending you signs that confirm when you are on the right path and when your decrees are being answered. And these signs are not coincidences, but are correspondences, which means they are precise communications from the invisible realm to show you that what you have decreed is already done in spirit and is now making its way into form. And most people miss these signs because they are looking for big dramatic changes, and they do not notice the small subtle shifts that always come first and that prepare the way for the larger manifestations. She taught that signs come in 3 levels, which are micro signs that are internal and subtle, and that only you can perceive, and medium signs that are external but small, and that might seem coincidental to others, and macro signs that are external and undeniable, and that change your circumstances completely. And she taught that you must learn to recognize and honor all 3 levels, because the micro signs are what tell you that the invisible work is happening. And if you dismiss the micro signs, then you will not trust the process and you will give up before the macro signs appear. The Midnight Prosperity Decree works through this 3-level progression, and within hours of speaking the decree, you will begin to notice micro signs, which might be a feeling of lightness in your body, or a sense of peace that has no logical reason, or a dream that feels significant, or a thought that comes to you that feels inspired. And you must pay attention to these micro signs and thank them, because they are the first evidence that your decree has been received and is being acted upon. And when you acknowledge the micro signs, you strengthen the channel and the medium, and macro signs can flow more easily. Let me tell you about Patricia and how she learned to read the 3 levels of signs, and how this skill allowed her to trust the process and stay the course until her complete financial transformation manifested. Patricia was 59 years old, and she lived in Boulder, Colorado, and she had been a massage therapist for 30 years, and she loved her work, but her income had been inconsistent, and she had never been able to save money, and she was always worried about where the next client would come from, and she had started to feel tired and burned out, and she wondered how much longer she could continue doing this work, and she had only $4,118 in her savings account, and her rent was going up by $250 per month, and she did not know how she was going to afford it. Patricia had been studying spiritual teachings for many years, and she had tried many different manifestation techniques, but nothing had created lasting change in her financial situation, and she felt frustrated and disillusioned, and she thought, maybe manifestation does not work. Or maybe it works for other people but not for me. And she was about to give up when she came across a lecture by Florence Scovel Shinn about the Midnight Prosperity Decree and the 3 levels of signs, and something about the teaching resonated with her, and she decided to try it one more time. Patricia began speaking the Midnight Decree, and the first night she spoke the words, "I am open to receive prosperity in expected and unexpected ways, and I trust the signs that confirm my supply, and it is already done." And she lay down to sleep, and she did not feel anything, and she thought, here we go again, nothing is working. But then as she was drifting off, she had a fleeting image in her mind of a golden door opening and light pouring through, and the image was gone in a second. But something about it felt significant, and she made a mental note, and then she fell asleep. The next morning, Patricia woke at 6:57, and the first thing she noticed was that she felt rested, which was unusual because she usually woke up tired and anxious. And she got out of bed and made coffee, and as she was drinking it, she noticed that her usual worries about money were not as loud in her mind, and they were still there, but they felt more distant. And she thought, this is strange. And she remembered the teaching about microsigns, and she thought, maybe the golden door image and this feeling of rest are the first signs. And she said out loud, "Thank you for these signs, and show me more." That day, Patricia had 3 massage clients scheduled, and all 3 of them tipped her more than usual, and one of them said, "I just feel like you need some extra support right now." And Patricia was surprised because she had not told anyone about her financial stress. And she thanked the client, and she thought, this is a medium sign, and it is small, but it is real. And she felt a little spark of hope. And that night, she spoke the Midnight Decree again, and she fell asleep quickly. And she had a dream that she was walking on a path, and there were pennies scattered on the path, and she was picking them up and putting them in her pocket. And when she looked in her pocket, it was full of $100 bills. And she woke from this dream at 2:34 in the morning, and she felt a certainty that money was coming. On the 3rd day, Patricia was walking to the grocery store, and she looked down, and there was a penny on the sidewalk, and normally she would have walked past it. But she remembered her dream, and she picked it up, and she said, "Thank you, universe. I received this sign, and I know more is coming." And as she was standing there holding the penny, her phone rang, and it was a woman she had worked with at a spa 5 years ago. And the woman said, "I am opening a new wellness center, and I need a massage therapist on staff, and I would love for you to join us. And the position comes with a guaranteed salary of $42,000 per year, plus tips, plus health insurance." And Patricia almost dropped her phone, and she said, "Yes, I am interested." And they scheduled a meeting for the next day. That night, Patricia spoke the Midnight Decree with tears of gratitude, and she said, "I see the signs, and I trust the signs, and I know that more is unfolding." And she fell asleep, and she slept more deeply than she had slept in years. And when she woke in the morning at 8:41, she felt like she was living in a different reality than she had been living in 3 days ago, and she thought the signs are real, and the universe is speaking, and I am finally listening. Patricia went to the meeting at the wellness center, and the owner showed her around, and the space was beautiful and full of light, and the owner said, "I have been looking for the right person for months, and when our mutual friend mentioned you, I knew immediately that you were the one, and I feel like this is meant to be." And Patricia felt the same way, and she accepted the position, and she started 2 weeks later. And for the first time in 30 years, she had a steady income and health insurance, and she did not have to worry about where the next client was coming from. But the signs did not stop there, because within the first month at the wellness center, Patricia received so many client requests that the owner said, "I want to give you a raise, and your new salary is $49,000 per year." And Patricia was speechless. And within 3 months, the owner asked Patricia to become a partner in the business, and this would increase her income even more and would give her equity. And Patricia said yes. And she thought all of this started with paying attention to the microsigns and trusting them even when they seemed small and insignificant. Over the next year, Patricia's income stabilized at $67,000 per year, and she was able to save money for the first time in her life. And she moved to a better apartment, and she started taking vacations, and she continued to speak the Midnight Decree every night. And she continued to watch for the signs at all 3 levels. and she noticed that the more she acknowledged the signs, the more signs appeared, and it was as if the universe was rewarding her attention with more communication. Patricia would tell people that learning to read the signs was the skill that changed everything for her, because before she learned this, she would dismiss the small signs as coincidence, and then she would give up before the big signs could appear. But once she understood that the micro signs were the foundation and that they always came first, then she could trust the process and stay in faith even when nothing big had happened yet. And this trust was what allowed the medium and macro signs to manifest. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that there are specific types of signs that indicate prosperity is on its way, and these are finding money on the ground, even if it is just a penny, and receiving unexpected money, even if it is small, and having dreams about water or gold or abundance, and feeling a sense of peace and certainty that has no logical basis, and hearing phrases or songs that confirm your decree, and meeting people who open doors for you, and receiving opportunities that you did not apply for. And she taught that you must become a detective of signs, and notice everything and thank everything, because gratitude amplifies the signal and brings more signs. She also taught that the reason signs are so important is that they bridge the gap between decree and manifestation, and decree happens instantly in the invisible realm. But manifestation in the physical realm takes time because physical matter is denser and moves more slowly than spiritual substance, and signs are the evidence that the invisible work is progressing, and that you should keep trusting and keep surrendering and not give up, because the full manifestation is on its way, and the signs are like mile markers on a highway telling you that you are going in the right direction and getting closer to your destination. The midnight decree is especially powerful for generating signs because when you decree at midnight and then fall asleep, you are giving the universe the entire night to work on your behalf and to send you signs in your dreams and to prepare synchronicities for the next day. And many people report that within 24 to 48 hours of starting the midnight decree, they begin to see signs, and these signs increase in frequency and magnitude the longer they continue the practice. And by the 7th night, or the 14th night, or the 30th night, the signs are undeniable and the transformation is underway. And as you rest now, signs are already being prepared for you, and you do not need to look for them or force them, but simply be open to noticing them when they appear, and they will appear in perfect timing and in perfect ways, and you will know them when you see them, because they will feel significant, and they will bring you peace. And what comes next is about divine timing, and about the 48-hour window, and about how to wait without anxiety. So continue resting, and continue trusting, and know that everything is being orchestrated in the invisible realm while you sleep. Time in the spiritual realm is not the same as time in the physical realm, and this is one of the most important things to understand when working with manifestation, because in the spiritual realm, everything is happening now, and there is no past and no future, but only an eternal present, and what you decree is instantly manifested in this eternal present. But for that manifestation to appear in the physical realm, time must pass, because physical matter moves more slowly than spiritual substance, and it must reorganize itself according to the decree, and this reorganization takes what we experience as time. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that there is no time in the divine mind, and that from the perspective of Source, everything you have ever desired already exists and is already yours and has always been yours. But in the human experience, we live in linear time, and we must wait for what is already done in spirit to materialize in form. And she taught that this waiting period is not empty or passive, but is actually the most important part of the process, because it is when the invisible forces are working and rearranging circumstances and preparing the way, and your job during this waiting period is not to make it happen or to help it along, but to trust and surrender and continue living your life as if the thing is already done. She taught that for most manifestations, there is a gestation period of approximately 48 hours, and this is not an arbitrary number, but is based on the natural rhythms of creation, because 48 hours is 2 full cycles of day and night, and it is long enough for the subconscious mind to integrate the new decree and for the quantum field to reorganize itself, and for synchronicities to align, and it is not so long that you lose faith and give up. And she taught that if you can hold the faith and the trust for 48 hours after making your decree, then you will almost always see evidence of the shift beginning to manifest. Let me tell you about Michael and what happened to him when he learned to trust divine timing, even when his circumstances looked impossible and when every logical part of him said it was too late. Michael was 67 years old, and he lived in Savannah, Georgia, and he had been living comfortably on his pension and his Social Security until his homeowner's insurance company sent him a letter saying they were dropping his coverage due to the age of his roof, and he got estimates for a new roof, and the cost was $19,384, and he did not have that much money in savings, and he applied to other insurance companies, and they all said they would not cover him without a new roof. And his mortgage company said if he did not have insurance, they would force place insurance, which would cost 3 times as much. Michael felt trapped, and he felt like he was going to lose his home, which had been in his family for 42 years, and he had 72 hours before the insurance cancellation would take effect, and then he would be in violation of his mortgage, and he did not know what to do. And he was lying awake at night running through scenarios, and none of them worked, and he felt panic rising in his chest like a wave that was going to drown him. Michael's daughter lived in California, and he called her and told her what was happening, and she said, "Dad, I am going to send you something to read, and you have to trust me, and just try it." And she emailed him a PDF of Florence Scovel Shinn's teachings on the Midnight Prosperity Decree and divine timing. And Michael read it, and his first thought was, this is nonsense, and I need real solutions, not spiritual platitudes. But his daughter called him back, and she said, "Dad, you have 72 hours and nothing else is working. So what do you have to lose by trying this?" And Michael said, "Fine, I will try it, but I do not believe it." That night, Michael set his alarm for 11:55, and when it woke him, he sat up in bed, and he read the decree his daughter had written out for him, which said, "I am supplied by infinite intelligence, and the perfect solution is already prepared, and I trust divine timing, and I release all fear." And Michael spoke these words, and his voice was flat, and he felt like a fool, but he spoke them anyway, because he had promised his daughter. And then he lay back down, and he thought, well, I did it, and nothing will change, and I will lose my house. And he fell asleep, not because he felt peaceful, but because he was exhausted. The next morning, Michael woke at 7:22, and he was immediately flooded with anxiety about the insurance and the roof and the 72 hours that were now 64 hours, and he got up and made coffee, and he sat at his kitchen table, and he tried to think of solutions, but there were no solutions that his logical mind could find, and he thought about selling the house, but that would take months, and he thought about borrowing money, but he had no one to borrow from, and he felt the panic rising again, and then he remembered the midnight decree, and he thought, this is stupid. But my daughter said to try it for at least 3 nights, so I will try it again tonight. That afternoon, Michael went to check his mail, and there was a letter from a law firm, and his first thought was, now I am being sued. But he opened the letter, and it was about a class action lawsuit that he had completely forgotten about, and the lawsuit was against a pharmaceutical company for a medication he had taken 5 years ago, and the letter said the settlement had been finalized, and he was being sent a check for $2,871. And Michael stared at this letter, and he thought, this is the first sign, but it is not enough, and I still need 16,000 more, and he felt a tiny flicker of hope, but mostly he still felt fear. That night, Michael set his alarm for midnight, and when it went off, he sat up, and he spoke the decree again, and this time he added his own words, and he said, I do not understand how this will work, but I am willing to trust, and I am willing to believe that divine timing is operating even though I cannot see it. And he fell asleep, and he had a dream that he was standing in front of his house, and the roof was glowing gold, and rain was falling, but the water was not damaging. Anything but was nourishing the ground, and he woke from this dream at 4:53 in the morning, and he felt a strange certainty that everything was going to be okay, even though nothing had changed yet. On the second day, Michael had 48 hours left before the insurance cancellation, and he spent the morning making phone calls to contractors and insurance agents and banks, and no one could help him. And he was about to give up when his phone rang, and it was a number he did not recognize, and he almost did not answer, but something told him to answer, and it was a woman who said, "My name is Janet, and I am your second cousin on your mother's side, and I do not know if you remember me, but I was going through some old family papers, and I found a document that shows your grandfather left you an inheritance that was never claimed, and I have been trying to reach you for weeks." And Michael said, "I do not understand," and Janet said, "The inheritance is $23,400, and it has been sitting in an estate account for 47 years, and you are the only heir, and I can have the money transferred to you within 72 hours. Michael sat down on his kitchen chair, and he felt like the room was spinning, and he said, "Are you sure this is real? And is this a scam?" And Janet said, "I understand your hesitation, and I am sending you all the legal documents right now, and you can verify everything with the probate court." And Michael received the email with the documents, and he called the probate court, and they confirmed that everything was legitimate. And he hung up the phone, and he sat very still, and he thought, "This is impossible. And this is exactly what I needed, and it is coming at exactly the right time, and it is exactly 48 hours after I started the midnight decree." That night, Michael spoke the midnight decree with tears streaming down his face, and he said, "I do not know how you did this, and I do not understand divine timing, but I see that it is real, and I see that it is perfect, and I surrender everything to you." And he fell asleep, and he slept more deeply than he had slept in months. And when he woke in the morning at 8:37, he felt like a different person. And he felt like he had been carried by invisible hands through an impossible situation. And he thought, "I will never doubt again." Michael received the inheritance within 72 hours, exactly as Janet had said, and he paid for the new roof, and he had enough money left over to make some other repairs to the house and to put some in savings, and his insurance was reinstated, and his mortgage company was satisfied, and he continued to speak the midnight decree every night for the rest of his life, because he wanted to stay connected to the invisible forces that had saved him, and he wanted to remember that divine timing is always operating even when he cannot see it. Michael would tell people that the hardest part of the experience was not the external crisis, but the internal waiting, because his logical mind kept telling him it was too late and there was no solution, and he had to actively choose every hour to trust divine timing over his fear. And the midnight decree gave him a structure for that trust, because every night at midnight he could renew his faith and release his fear and surrender to something greater than himself. And he learned that divine timing is not about making things happen when you want them, but about allowing things to happen when they are meant to, and that divine timing is always perfect even when it feels like it is cutting it close. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that the 48-hour window is the average gestation time for most manifestations, but that some things come faster and some things take longer depending on how much needs to be rearranged in the invisible realm and how much resistance you have and how aligned you are with divine timing. And she taught that you cannot force divine timing and you cannot make things happen on your schedule, but you can trust that everything is unfolding at the perfect pace and in the perfect sequence, and that delays are not denials but are protection, because sometimes what you want is not ready to come to you yet, and sometimes you are not ready to receive it yet, and divine timing ensures that everything comes together at the moment when it will serve your highest good. She also taught that the way to live during the waiting period is not with anxiety or doubt, but with calm expectancy, and you live as if the thing is already done, which it is in the spiritual realm, and you go about your daily life, and you do what is in front of you, and you trust that the invisible forces are working, and you watch for the signs, and you thank them when they appear, and you do not dig up the seed to see if it is growing, but you water it with your faith, and your trust, and your continued midnight decrees. And then one day you wake up and the full manifestation is there, and it feels like it happened overnight, but it was actually building invisibly the entire time. And as you rest now, divine timing is operating in your life, whether you know it or not, and the 48-hour window has already begun. If you have been speaking the decree, and if you have not yet begun speaking the decree, then it will begin the moment you do, and you do not need to worry about when or how things will manifest. but only trust that they will, and continue resting and continue trusting. And what comes next is about the collective field and about how you are not alone in your decree. And thousands of souls are supporting you, so continue resting. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that you are never alone, and that when you make a decree, you are not making it in isolation, but you are making it within a vast field of consciousness that connects all beings. And this field is sometimes called the collective unconscious, and sometimes called the unified field, and sometimes called the mind of God. And whatever you call it, the principle is the same, which is that every thought and word and decree that you generate ripples out into this field and affects everyone and everything. And simultaneously you are being affected by the thoughts and words and decrees of everyone else. And when many people decree the same thing, the field becomes stronger and the manifestation becomes faster. She taught that this is why prayer circles and spiritual communities are so powerful, because when a group of people come together and focus their intention on the same outcome, they are creating a concentrated field of consciousness that has far more power than any individual could generate alone. And she taught that even if you are physically alone, when you speak your midnight decree, you are never spiritually alone, because you are connected through the invisible field to every other person who is also decreeing prosperity, and you are strengthening them and they are strengthening you. And this collective support is what makes manifestation possible, especially for those who are just beginning and who do not yet have strong faith. The Midnight Prosperity Decree creates a specific collective field that spans the entire globe, because at every moment, someone somewhere in the world is speaking the decree at their local midnight. And this creates a wave of prosperity consciousness that circles the earth continuously. And when you join this practice, you are joining a vast, invisible network of souls who are all activating the same frequency. And this collective frequency is what shifts the global consciousness from lack to abundance, and from fear to trust, and from struggle to ease. Let me tell you about Susan and how she discovered the power of the collective field, and how this discovery transformed not only her own financial reality, but created ripples that affected everyone around her. Susan was 55 years old, and she lived in Portland, Maine, and she had been working as a freelance graphic designer for 23 years, and her income had always been unpredictable, and she would have months where she made good money, and then months where she made almost nothing, and she never felt secure, and she never felt like she could relax. And she had been living this way for so long that she thought this was just how life was for creative people. Susan had tried many manifestation practices over the years, and she had done vision boards and affirmations, and she had worked with the law of attraction, and nothing had created lasting change, and she felt like she was missing something, and she felt like maybe she was not spiritual enough, or not positive enough, or not disciplined enough, and she was about to give up on the whole idea of manifestation when she came across a teaching by Florence Scovel Shinn about the collective prosperity field, and about how you do not manifest alone, but as part of a larger web of consciousness. The teaching explained that when you speak the Midnight Prosperity Decree, you can call in witnesses from the invisible realm, and these witnesses can be angels or ancestors or spiritual guides or even other people who are speaking the same decree. And the presence of these witnesses amplifies your decree and makes it more powerful. And Susan was intrigued by this idea because she had always felt like her manifestation efforts were too weak and too isolated. And she thought, maybe what I need is support from the invisible realm. Susan decided to try the Midnight Decree and to call in witnesses. And the first night she set her alarm for 11:58. And when it went off, she sat up in bed and she took a few deep breaths. And then she said out loud, I call upon the presence of my grandmother Helen, who always believed in me. And I call upon the angels of abundance, and I call upon all the souls around the world who are decreeing prosperity at this moment. And I ask you to witness my decree and to strengthen my, field. And then she spoke the decree, which was, I am a natural receiver of wealth, and money flows to me easily and constantly, and I am never alone in my prosperity. And she felt as she spoke these words, a warmth in her chest and a sense of presence in the room, and she thought, maybe this is working. Susan lay back down and she fell asleep quickly. and she had a dream that she was standing in a vast circle of people, and they were all holding hands, and golden light was flowing between them and through them, and she could feel the power of the circle. And she woke from this dream at 3:47 in the morning, and she felt different, and she felt connected in a way she had never felt before, and she thought, I am part of something larger than myself. The next morning, Susan woke and she checked her email, and there were 3 client inquiries. And this was unusual, because normally she had to actively market herself to get clients. But these 3 inquiries had come to her without any effort on her part. And one of them was from a company that wanted her to do a large project for $12,500. And Susan stared at this email, and she thought, this is the first evidence. And she replied immediately and said yes. That night, Susan called in her witnesses again, and this time she felt the presence even more strongly, and she added her own words to the decree. And she said, thank you, Grandmother Helen, for watching over me. And thank you, angels, for opening these doors. And thank you to all my invisible partners in prosperity. And she fell asleep, feeling held and supported. And when she woke in the morning, she felt excited to check her email, and there was another client inquiry for a smaller project, but it was still $750, which was unexpected money. Over the next 2 weeks, Susan noticed that her client flow increased dramatically, and she went from having to chase clients to having clients come to her, and she raised her rates because she was so busy. And to her surprise, no one complained, and everyone paid her new higher rate, and she realized that something fundamental had shifted in her field, and she was no longer operating from lack and isolation, but from abundance and connection. And this shift was attracting more abundance. Susan also noticed that other areas of her life were improving, and her relationship with her sister, which had been strained for years, suddenly felt easier, and her health improved, and she had more energy, and she met new friends who were also interested in spiritual growth and prosperity. And she thought, all of this is connected, and all of this is happening because I stopped trying to manifest alone, started working with the collective field. Susan continued to call in her witnesses every night at midnight, and she started to feel so connected to the invisible network of prosperity that she decided to create a physical community to match the invisible one. And she started a small group in Portland for people who wanted to practice the Midnight Decree together. And the group met once a week, and they would share their experiences and support each other, and then they would all go home and speak the decree at midnight in their own beds, knowing that they were connected through the invisible field. The group grew quickly, and within 6 months there were 37 people in it, and within a year there were over 100 people, and everyone in the group reported financial improvements, and some people's transformations were dramatic, and some were subtle, but everyone experienced a shift. And Susan realized that this was proof of what Florence Scovel Shinn had taught, which was that collective consciousness is exponentially more powerful than individual consciousness. Susan's own income stabilized at an average of $8,000 per month, and this was more than double what she had been making before. And she was able to buy a small house, and she was able to save money for retirement, and she continued to call in her witnesses every night, and she continued to feel supported by the invisible field. And she would tell people that the loneliest thing about financial struggle is feeling like you are the only one, and like no one understands, and like you have to figure it out all by yourself. But when you connect to the collective field, you realize that you are never alone, and that there is a vast network of support, both visible and invisible, that is always available if you just call upon it. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that the collective field works according to the principle of entrainment, which means that when you are in the presence of a stronger field, your field begins to match it. And this is why it is so powerful to call in witnesses who are already prosperous or who are already manifesting, because their field entrains your field and lifts you up to their frequency. And this is also why it is important to be careful about who you spend time with, because if you are constantly around people who are negative or fearful or stuck in lack, then their field will entrain your field downward. But if you spend time with people who are positive and abundant and trusting, then their field will entrain your field upward. She taught that when you speak the Midnight Decree and call in witnesses, you are deliberately choosing to entrain your field to the highest possible frequency, which is the frequency of infinite abundance. And you are saying, I am not going to let my past or my current circumstances or my fears determine my frequency, but I am going to align with the frequency of Source, and I am going to allow that frequency to lift me and carry me and transform me. And this is the power of the collective field, and this is why it works so consistently for everyone who uses it with sincerity and trust. And as you rest now, you are being held by the collective field, whether you feel it or not, and thousands of people around the world are speaking the Midnight Prosperity Decree, and their decrees are strengthening yours, and your decrees will strengthen theirs, and you are all connected in an invisible web of abundance, and you do not need to see this web to benefit from it, but only trust that it is there and continue resting and continue receiving. And what comes next is the recapitulation of everything we have shared and the final story that will seal this teaching into your soul. You have journeyed with me now through many teachings and many stories. And if you are still listening, then you were meant to hear every word. And if you have fallen asleep, then your subconscious has absorbed every teaching, and it is already working in you, whether you know it or not. And now we are approaching the completion of this transmission. And before I give you the final seal, I want to gather together everything we have explored so that you can see the full picture and understand how each piece connects to create the whole. You heard about the word as decree, and about how every word you speak is not a description of reality, but a creation of reality. And you heard about Florence Scovel Shinn and how she discovered that prosperity comes not through struggle, but through surrender. And you heard about the midnight hour, and why it is the most powerful time to decree, because it is when your conscious resistance is lowest, and your subconscious mind is most receptive. And you heard about how to speak the decree, and then fall asleep trusting that the invisible forces are working on your behalf while you rest. You heard about identity and about how you do not attract what you want, but you attract what you are. And you heard that if you want to be prosperous, you must first claim the identity of prosperity, not as something you will become, but as something you already are and have always been. And you heard that this identity shift is what precedes all manifestation, and that when your identity changes, your reality reorganizes itself to match without effort on your part. You heard about resistance and about the 7 money blocks that keep most people trapped in lack, and you heard that resistance is not something you fight, but something you release through surrender. And you heard about how the Midnight Decree is a tool of surrender, because when you speak it and fall asleep, you are saying, I am releasing control and trusting the invisible. And this level of trust is what dissolves resistance and opens the floodgates of abundance. You heard about signs and about how the universe speaks to you through 3 levels, which are micro signs that are internal and subtle, and medium signs that are external but small, and macro signs that are external and undeniable. And you heard that you must learn to recognize and honor all 3 levels, because they are the evidence that your decree is being answered, and that you should keep trusting and keep surrendering until the full manifestation appears. You heard about divine timing and about the 48-hour window, and about how some manifestations come quickly and some take longer, but all come at the perfect moment, which is the moment when you are ready to receive. And you heard about how to live during the waiting period, not with anxiety, but with calm expectancy. And you heard that the invisible forces are always working, even when you cannot see evidence yet, and that delays are not denials, but are protection and perfect timing. You heard about the collective field, and about how you are never alone when you decree, and about how thousands of souls around the world are speaking the Midnight Prosperity Decree and creating a wave of abundance consciousness that circles the earth continuously. And you heard about how to call in witnesses from the invisible realm to strengthen your field and amplify your decree. And you heard that collective consciousness is exponentially more powerful than individual consciousness. And now I am going to share with you one final story. And this story is the culmination of everything we have explored. And this story will show you what becomes possible when you apply all of these teachings together, and when you trust completely and surrender completely and allow the Midnight Prosperity Code to work through you. And the person in this story is named Betty. And what happened to her will seal this teaching into your soul. Betty was 58 years old, and she lived in Richmond, Virginia. And her situation was more desperate than anyone else you have heard about tonight, because she was facing eviction in 7 days, and she had a notice taped to her front door that said if she did not pay $8,962 by the following Wednesday at 5 p.m., then the sheriff would come and remove her and her belongings from the apartment, and she would be homeless, and Betty had nowhere to go and no one to call, and she had been applying for jobs for 11 months, and no one would hire her because of her age, and she felt like she had come to the end of everything, and she did not know how she would survive. Betty had tried everything she could think of to raise the money, and she had applied for loans, but she was denied because her credit was bad, and she had tried to borrow from friends, but they did not have money to lend, and she had sold everything of value that she owned, and she still only had $1,433, and she was $7,529 short, and there was no logical solution to her problem, and she felt a terror in her body that made it hard to breathe and hard to think, and she would wake up at 2 a.m. and lie in the dark and feel the walls closing in, and she thought, I am going to die and no one will care, and no one will even know. On the day that Betty received the eviction notice, she walked to the library because she could not stand to be in her apartment, and she was sitting at a computer and she was searching for emergency assistance programs, and every program said there was a waiting list or she did not qualify, and she felt hopelessness washing over her like a wave, and she thought, I give up, and I cannot do this anymore. And she was about to close the browser when she saw an article title that said, The Midnight, Prosperity Code and How It Saved My Life. And something about those words caught her attention, and she clicked on the article. The article was written by a woman who had been in a similar situation and who had learned about Florence Scovel Shinn and the Midnight Prosperity Decree, and who had applied it, and her entire life had changed within 48 hours. And Betty read this article 3 times, and part of her thought, this is too good to be true, and this is probably fake. And part of her thought, but what if it is real, and what do I have to lose? And she was so desperate that she decided to try it, even though she did not really believe it would work. That night, Betty set her alarm for 11:55, and when it woke her, she sat up in bed in her small apartment with the eviction notice still taped to the door, and she felt like the most foolish person in the world. But she spoke the words that the article had instructed, and she said, I am supplied by infinite abundance, and the perfect solution is already prepared. And I call upon the presence of my mother who has passed, and I call upon the angels of provision, and I call upon all souls who are decreeing prosperity. And I ask you to witness my decree and to help me now, and I trust divine timing, even though I am afraid, and I surrender all fear and all control, and it is already done. And as Betty spoke these words, she started to cry because she felt so alone and so scared and so desperate, and she did not feel anything shifting. But she lay back down and she fell asleep because she was exhausted from worry. The next morning, Betty woke at 6:42, and the first thing she saw was the eviction notice, and she felt the familiar panic rising. But then she remembered the midnight decree, and she thought, I have 6 more days, and I am going to speak the decree every night until Wednesday, and see what happens. And she got up, and she made coffee, and she sat by the window, and she tried to feel calm, even though her hands were shaking. That day, Betty went for a walk because she needed to get out of the apartment, and as she was walking, she saw a penny on the ground, and normally she would have walked past it. But she remembered reading about signs, and she picked it up, and she said out loud, Thank you, universe. I received this sign, and I trust more is coming. And a man walking past her looked at her strangely, but she did not care, and she put the penny in her pocket, and she felt a tiny spark of something that might have been hope. That afternoon, Betty was sitting on a bench in the park, and a woman sat down next to her, and they started talking. And the woman said, What is your name? And Betty said, My name is Betty. And the woman said, My name is Sarah, and I feel like I was supposed to meet you today. And Betty felt a strange certainty, and she said, I feel that too. And they talked for an hour, and Sarah said, What do you do for work? And Betty said, I have been looking for a job for 11 months, and I cannot find anything. And Sarah said, What kind of work do you do? And Betty told her, and Sarah said, This is amazing because my company is desperate to find someone with your skills, and we have been looking for months, and I would like to give you my card and have you call me tomorrow. Betty took the card, and she thanked Sarah. And when Sarah left, Betty sat on the bench, and she stared at the card, and she thought, this is too perfect, and this must be a sign. And that night, she spoke the midnight decree with more conviction, and she said, "Thank you for sending Sarah, and thank you for this opportunity, and I trust that more is coming." And she fell asleep quickly, and she had a dream that she was swimming in an ocean, and she was not drowning, but floating, and the water was warm and supporting her. And she woke from this dream at 4:51 in the morning, and she felt a peace that she could not explain. The next day, Betty called Sarah, and Sarah said, "Come in for an interview this afternoon." And Betty went, and the interview lasted 10 minutes, and Sarah said, "I do not need to interview you further, because I know you are the right person, and I am offering you a position with a starting salary of $43,000 per year, and you can start immediately, and we will give you your first paycheck at the end of this week, which will be a full 2 weeks of pay, even though you will have only worked 3 days." And Betty said yes, and when she left the office, she walked to her car, and she sat in the driver's seat, and she cried so hard that her whole body shook, and she said, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." But Betty still needed $8,962 by Wednesday, and the paycheck would not come until Friday, and she thought, "I am so close, but I am still going to be evicted unless something else happens." And that night, she spoke the midnight decree, and she said, "I have seen your hand moving, and I trust that the full solution is coming, and I surrender." And she fell asleep, and she slept deeply. On Tuesday morning, Betty woke, and she checked her mailbox, and there was a letter from the IRS, and she thought, "Oh no, now I am in trouble with the IRS too." But she opened the letter, and it said that she had overpaid her taxes 3 years ago due to an error, and they were refunding her $4,873. And the check was enclosed, and Betty stared at this check, and she thought, "This is real, and this is happening, and I am being carried by invisible hands." That afternoon, Betty received a phone call from a lawyer, and the lawyer said, "I am handling the estate of your Aunt Margaret, who passed away 6 months ago, and we have been trying to reach you, and you are named in the will, and you are receiving an inheritance of $5,000, and we can wire this to your bank account today if you provide your information." And Betty provided her information, and she hung up the phone, and she calculated 4,873 plus 5,000, which was $9,873, which was more than the 8,962 she needed, and she had money left over. Betty went to the landlord's office on Tuesday afternoon, and she paid the full amount owed, and the landlord removed the eviction notice, and Betty went back to her apartment, and she sat on her couch, and she felt like she was in a dream, and she thought, "This is impossible, and this is miraculous, and this all happened in exactly 6 days, which was less than the 7 days I had." And she understood that divine timing is always perfect and is always precise, and she continued to speak the midnight decree every night for the rest of her life, because she never wanted to forget that she was always supported and always supplied, even when circumstances looked impossible. Betty's story spread, and many people heard it, and many people started practicing the midnight prosperity decree, and many people experienced their own miracles. And Betty would say to anyone who asked that the decree did not bring her the money, but the decree changed her from someone who was in terror and isolation to someone who was in trust and connection. And when she made that shift, the universe could finally reach her and give her what had always been hers, and what had been waiting for her all along. And now you have heard all the stories and all the teachings, and you are ready to receive the final seal. And this seal is not something I give you, but something you claim for yourself. And what comes next are the sacred words that will activate everything you have heard and integrate it into your subconscious mind. And these words are called the Midnight Prosperity Seal. And you do not need to do anything but listen and receive. And if you are asleep, then you will receive even more fully, because your conscious resistance is gone, and your subconscious is completely open. And so breathe deeply now, and prepare to receive the seal that changes everything. Even if you are sleeping right now, something in you is awake, and this part of you is not your conscious mind, and it is not your ego, and it is not your thinking self, but it is your soul. and your soul never sleeps, and your soul hears every word I speak, and your soul knows truth from falsehood, and your soul recognizes the voice of the infinite. And as I speak these final words, your soul is opening and receiving and being transformed, and you do not need to try or understand or even believe, because your soul knows what to do, and your soul is doing it now while you rest. I am going to guide you through 3 cycles of breathing, and even if you are asleep, your body will breathe with me, because your body knows, and your body is intelligent, and your body is connected to the rhythm of the universe, and so we breathe together now. And the first breath is to clear and release and let go of everything that is not yours, and everything that blocks your prosperity, and breathe in slowly through your nose and feel the air filling your lungs, and hold the breath for a moment at the top, and then breathe out slowly through your mouth and feel yourself releasing all fear and all doubt and all resistance, and breathe in again, even deeper this time, and hold, and breathe out, releasing even more, and breathe in a 3rd time, filling yourself completely with light and trust and the presence of the infinite, and hold and breathe out, surrendering everything. And now your field is clear, and your frequency is aligned, and you are ready to receive the Midnight Prosperity Seal. And this seal comes in 3 waves, and each wave builds on the one before. And by the 3rd wave, the seal will be complete, and nothing will ever be the same. And the first wave is spoken softly like a whisper, because it is entering gently and planting the seed deep in your subconscious mind. It is finished, and the struggle is over, and the lack is dissolved, and the fear is gone, and prosperity is your nature, and wealth is your identity, and you are supplied now and always, and you have never been separate from your abundance, and you only forgot, and now you remember, and it is already done in the invisible realm, and it is manifesting now in the visible realm, and you do not need to do anything but receive and trust and surrender, and it is finished. It is done, and the decree has been spoken, and the universe has heard, and the invisible forces are moving, and circumstances are rearranging, and doors are opening, and resources are flowing, and opportunities are appearing, and signs are being sent, and synchronicities are aligning, and everything you need is coming to you easily and naturally and joyfully, and it is done. And nothing can stop it, and nothing can delay it, because it is already complete in the mind of God, and it is done. And it cannot be otherwise, because this is spiritual law, and spiritual law is absolute, and spiritual law does not fail. And what is decreed in faith must manifest in form, and what is surrendered in trust must be received in peace, and what is aligned in consciousness must appear in experience. And you are aligned now, and you are decreed now, and you are receiving now, and it cannot be otherwise, because this is how reality works, and this is how the universe operates, and it cannot be otherwise. And now the 2nd wave comes with more power and more conviction. And this wave is spoken in a normal voice, because it is integrating the seed and watering it, and causing it to grow and take root in every cell of your body, and in every thought of your mind, and in every beat of your heart. It is finished, and you are not who you were, and you have been transformed, and your identity has shifted, and you are no longer someone who lacks, but someone who receives, and you are no longer someone who struggles, but someone who flows, and you are no longer someone who fears, but someone who trusts. And this new identity is not something you created, but something you uncovered, and it was always there beneath the layers of conditioning and programming and false belief, and now the layers have been stripped away, and you stand in your truth, which is that you are an expression of infinite abundance, and it is finished. It is done, and the Midnight Decree has activated a field around you, and this field is magnetic, and this field attracts prosperity, like a magnet attracts iron, and you do not need to chase money or opportunities or clients or jobs, because they are chasing you, and they are seeking you, and they are finding you. And you wake each morning to new evidence of your supply, and you go to sleep each night in gratitude for what has been received and what is yet to come. And the flow is constant, and the flow is easy, and the flow is joyful, and it is done. And it cannot be otherwise because you have aligned yourself with the source of all supply, and the source is infinite, and the source never runs dry, and the source gives freely and abundantly and joyfully to all who open to receive. And you are open now, and you are receiving now, and you will continue to receive because you have claimed your birthright and you have remembered who you are, and it cannot be otherwise because this is truth, and truth cannot be changed, and truth cannot be diminished, and it cannot be otherwise. And now the third wave comes with full authority and full power. And this wave is spoken as a decree that shakes the foundations of reality and commands the quantum field to reorganize itself according to the word that is spoken. And this is not arrogance, but recognition of the divine power that flows through you when you speak from your true identity and when you speak in alignment with Source. It is finished, and I declare by the authority of Florence Scovel Shinn, who discovered this code, and by the authority of every mystic and master who has walked this earth and known this truth, and by the authority of the infinite intelligence that created all things, and by the authority of my own divine nature, that prosperity is mine now, and wealth flows to me now, and abundance surrounds me now, and lack is impossible, and struggle is over, and fear has no power. And I am supplied in every moment and in every way, and nothing can block this flow, and nothing can diminish this truth, and it is finished, and it is sealed, and it is done. It is done, and I speak this not as a wish or a hope or a prayer, but as a command and a law and an absolute truth. And I speak this for myself and for every soul who hears these words, and for every person who is speaking the midnight prosperity decree in this moment, anywhere on this earth. And I speak this into the collective field, and I strengthen the grid, and I amplify the frequency. And what I decree for myself, I decree for all, and what is done for one is done for all. And we rise together, and we prosper together, and we remember together, and it is done, and it is sealed, and it cannot be undone. And it cannot be otherwise because I am not separate from Source, and Source is not separate from me, and what Source has is mine. And what I decree Source confirms, and there is no gap, and there is no delay, and there is no barrier between the invisible and the visible. Because I have dissolved the barrier with my faith and my trust and my surrender, and I stand now in the flow, and the flow moves through me, and the flow is me, and I am the flow, and it cannot be otherwise, because this is who I am, and this is who I have always been, and this is who I will always be, and it cannot be otherwise. And now we move into the decree of identity. And this decree is the most powerful because it does not ask for prosperity, but claims the identity of prosperity. And when you claim identity, everything else follows naturally and effortlessly. And this decree also comes in 3 waves, and each wave plants the truth deeper until it becomes the foundation of your being. And the first wave is soft and gentle like morning light. I am a natural receiver of wealth, and this is not something I learned, but something I was born knowing, and every cell in my body knows how to receive, and every breath I take is receiving, and every moment I live is receiving. And money comes to me as naturally as air comes to my lungs, and as naturally as blood flows through my veins, and I do not need to work hard for it, or struggle for it, or convince anyone to give it to me, because it is mine by divine right, and it flows to me because I am a natural receiver, and I have always been receiving, and I am receiving now. I have always received, and when I look back at my life, I see that I have been supplied in every moment, even when I thought I was lacking, and even when I was afraid I was still being held, and still being guided, and still being provided for. And the evidence is that I am here, and I am breathing, and I am alive, and I survived every challenge and overcame every obstacle and made it through every dark night. And this is proof that I have always received, and I will always receive, because receiving is my nature and my identity and my truth. And it cannot be otherwise, because I am made in the image of infinite abundance, and infinite abundance does not lack, and does not struggle, and does not fear, and therefore I do not lack, and I do not struggle, and I do not fear. And this is not positive thinking, but factual truth. And this is not affirmation, but declaration. and it cannot be otherwise, because I am who I am, and I am what Source is, and it cannot be otherwise. And now the second wave comes with deeper knowing and with more certainty. And this wave is integrating the identity into every layer of your consciousness and every dimension of your being, and you are becoming what you have always been, and you are remembering what you have always known. I am a natural receiver of wealth, and this truth is not new but ancient, and my soul has known this truth for eternity, and only my mind forgot. And now my mind remembers, and my thoughts align with my soul, and my words align with my truth. And I speak from my divine identity, not from my human fear. And when I speak from this place, mountains move, and seas part, and doors open, and money flows. And this is not magic, but natural law. And I am living in alignment with natural law, and therefore prosperity is my constant experience, and wealth is my perpetual reality. I have always received, and I look around at this moment, and I see the evidence of my receiving, and I have a roof over my head, and food in my belly, and clothes on my body, and breath in my lungs. And these are not small things, but miracles. And I have been so focused on what I do not have, that I forgot to see what I do have, and what I do have proves that I am a receiver, and proves that I am supplied, and proves that the universe has never abandoned me and never will, because I am part of the universe, and the universe cannot abandon itself. And it cannot be otherwise, because identity cannot be changed by circumstances, and my identity is prosperous and wealthy and supplied, regardless of what my bank account says, or what my bills say, or what my fears say, because identity precedes manifestation, and I claim my identity now, and my manifestation must follow, and it cannot be otherwise, because this is spiritual law, and spiritual law is immutable and absolute. And now the third wave comes with complete authority and unshakable conviction, and this wave is the final integration. And after this wave you will never be the same, and you will never see yourself the same way, and you will never relate to money the same way, because you will know beyond all doubt that you are prosperity itself, and you are wealth embodied, and you are abundance made flesh. I am a natural receiver of wealth, and I declare this truth with every fiber of my being, and I claim this identity with every cell of my body, and I embody this reality with every breath I take. And I am not becoming a receiver because I already am a receiver, and I am not trying to be wealthy because I already am wealthy, and the wealth I seek is seeking me, and the money I desire is desiring me, and we are magnetized to each other, and we are drawn to each other, and we are meeting each other now in this moment and in every moment from this moment forward. I have always received, and I will always receive, and there has never been a moment when I was not supplied, and there will never be a moment when I am not supplied. And this is my testimony, and this is my truth, and this is my lived experience. And anyone who doubts this will see the evidence in my life, and will witness the miracles that follow me, and will know that I speak truth, because my life proves it, and my abundance confirms it, and my joy demonstrates it. And it cannot be otherwise, because I have spoken it, and I have claimed it, and I have sealed it, and what is sealed in consciousness cannot be unsealed, and what is decreed in faith cannot be undecreed, and what is known in the soul cannot be unknown, and I know, and I decree, and I seal, and it cannot be otherwise, because I am the authority in my own life, and I speak from the throne of my divine identity, and when I speak from this place, the universe has no choice but to obey, and it cannot be otherwise. And now we come to the final sealing, and this is where everything is locked into place and anchored into reality and made permanent and unchangeable, and you will feel this sealing even if you are deeply asleep, because your soul feels everything, and your soul is awake, and your soul is receiving this transmission and holding it and protecting it and nurturing it until it blooms fully in your life. And so it is sealed by the power of the spoken word and by the authority of Florence Scovel Shinn, who taught this truth, and by the presence of all the witnesses, both visible and invisible, who have heard your decree and confirmed it and strengthened it. And so it is sealed in your consciousness and in your subconscious and in your superconscious and in every dimension of your being. And so it is sealed in the quantum field and in the collective unconscious and in the mind of God. And so it is. sealed in time and space and matter and energy, and nothing can break this seal, and nothing can remove this seal, because it is sealed with truth, and truth is eternal. And so it remains, and it does not fade, and it does not weaken, and it does not disappear, because what is sealed in the midnight hour remains sealed in all hours, and what is decreed in faith remains decreed in all circumstances, and what is claimed in consciousness remains claimed in all experiences. And so it remains, and you will see the evidence, and you will witness the miracles, and you will live the abundance, and it remains. And it cannot be otherwise, because the seal is complete, and the decree is finished, and the identity is claimed, and the work is done, and all that remains now is for you to receive, and to trust, and to allow, and to watch as everything you have decreed manifests in perfect timing and perfect sequence and perfect measure. And it cannot be otherwise, because it is sealed, and so it is. And so it is. And these three words are the final punctuation and the final confirmation and the final amen. And when you say these words, you are agreeing with the universe, and you are saying yes to your prosperity, and you are accepting your wealth, and you are opening your hands to receive. And so it is, and so it remains, and so it will always be. And there is nothing more to say, and nothing more to do, and everything is complete. You can continue resting now, and you can sleep as deeply as you need to sleep, and you can dream whatever dreams come to you, because the work is finished, and the decree is sealed, and the transformation is happening, even as you rest. And when you wake, you will not be the same person who fell asleep, and you will not see the world the same way, and you will not relate to money the same way, because something fundamental has shifted in you, and this shift is permanent and irreversible. Everything that needed to enter you has already entered, and everything that needed to be released has already been released, and everything that needed to be activated has already been activated, and you are now in the flow of midnight prosperity. And this flow will carry you and provide for you and surprise you and delight you. And you do not need to know how it works, and you do not need to understand the mechanism, and you only need to trust and allow and receive and give thanks. When you wake in the morning, whether that is in 1 hour or in 8 hours, you will be different. And the difference might be subtle at first, but you will feel it, and you will know it, and you will see the evidence in small ways, and then in larger ways, and then in undeniable ways. And within 48 hours, you will have tangible proof that something has changed, and within a week, you will have multiple confirmations, and within a month, your financial reality will be recognizably different, and within a year, you will look back at this moment, and you will say, that was the night everything changed. Not because something changed outside of you, but because you remembered what was always true inside of you, which is that you are a natural receiver, and you have always been supplied, and you will always be supplied, and prosperity is your nature, and wealth is your identity, and abundance is your birthright, and you were never separate from it, and you only forgot, and now you remember, and you will never forget again. Rest now and sleep deeply and dream prosperity, and let the midnight code work through you while you sleep. And trust that invisible hands are rearranging your reality right now in this moment and preparing blessings and miracles and surprises that will arrive at the perfect time and in the perfect way, and you do not need to make it happen because it is already happening, and all you need to do is rest and receive. It is finished, and you are wealthy, and you are prosperous, and you are supplied, and it cannot be otherwise. And so it is, and so it remains, and so it will always be. And there is nothing more to say except thank you for listening, and thank you for trusting, and thank you for opening yourself to receive this transmission, and may you wake in abundance, and may you walk in prosperity, and may you know beyond all doubt that you were always held and always loved and always supplied, and it is finished. And so it is.